So I told you yesterday it's the Rebbe's particular day, and so I'd like to begin with a niggin that he was fond of, so that we could tune into him. Ya ma 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 Triya ma 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 ya da 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 ya da 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 again ya da 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 ya da 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 ya da 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 ya da Achel Elokim Domin Nafshi Ki Mimenu Tikvati Achu Tzuri Vishuati Misgabi Loemot Yad da 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 Yad da 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 Triya da da Triya da 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 Ya da 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 da. I understand that today our task is, I didn't put the ears in yet, but later on I'll put them in when we get to responses and questions. So I could talk louder, so you can hear me in the back. You can hear me, yes? Okay. It's very clear that every time you give people an idea, an admonition, the inner response is, oh yeah, I'd like to do that. But then it gets to the place of, will you do it? The answer is most of the time not. Not because people are bad or unwilling, but look, if I give you an instruction of how to go into the control panel of your computer and to shift something to foreign languages so Hebrew should show up, and I give you the instructions in great detail, and you don't write them down, the likelihood is you won't be able to do it. But what happens if we do it and you have experienced it in your body, then the likelihood is you're going to remember better. And that's how Reb Nachman puts it in one of his Torahs. He says, Me'od me'od tzorich lerachem al haguf, al guf habasar. You have to have great compassion for your body of flesh. Because the neshama, and here you go another, see, even in the teaching you go within a story, a teaching within a teaching, because Reb Pinchas of Koretz raises the question like this. He says, it is written, Nishmat Adam telamdenu da'at, the soul of a person, Nishmat Shada Tavinem, the neshama teaches you. So how come we live a lifetime and we still haven't learned? He says, because the neshama isn't a good teacher. It doesn't like to repeat anything. So if I were to go to the place where all my epiphanies have been in my life, and if they all were to come together at this moment, not only would I be blown out, I don't know if I could live even to take so much awareness that has accumulated, but I don't have it. Mm-hmm. What happened? Because I didn't create enough kelim vessels to contain it. So experience is a vessel that helps contain it. So Reb Nachman says, when you learn something and your neshama is happy about it, make sure you teach it to your body. Because the neshama is likely not to bring it back to you, but since you have it in your body, you'll be able to bring it back. So bringing it into experiential things is very important. So in your Maggidut, the likelihood is you're going to inspire people and it's going to be wonderful. One of the issues that I had with my Chaver Reb Shlomo was that he was wonderful at inspiring people, enthusiastic inspiration. But then you would say, so what happened? And they would say, oh, it was so great, it was far out of sight, it felt so holy. But then you say, so what have you learned? What can you repeat from there? And it's really important that in your teaching, you create some kind of a module of an experiential thing that can be repeated. When I was teaching at the University of Manitoba, one of the things that inspired me a great deal from studying with Howard Thurman, who was the dean of the chapel at Boston University, my Schwarzer Rebbe, I call him. He was a remarkable person. And he taught a course, Spiritual Disciplines and Resources, with labs. So you can imagine how much I wanted to take those courses. I didn't know yet who he was. I do want to tell you this story. He deserves that the story be told. I lived in New Bedford, Massachusetts at that time, and in order to do my job at the shul and the afternoon school, I had to really work very hard and get up at 5 in the morning to make my way to Boston from New Bedford. In those days it took 2 hours. And I got to Boston University, everything was locked down. Hillel House was not available, and I hadn't davened yet because it was dark when I left. So when was I going to daven? I needed to daven there and have a little breakfast. I looked, the only place was open was a big chapel upstairs. So I went, looked around the chapel, statues there, evangelists, hat mir nicht gefallen. I wasn't happy there. So I went downstairs into the basement, and there was a little chapel. It was beautiful, except there was a brass cross standing there. So next door there was a room that was called the Daniel Marsh Memorabilia Room. There was a room where he had all his certificates and honor statements, the rolls there, and there was nothing there to stop me, and especially because on one of them it said Anno Mundi, and it gave the Jewish date too. I was very happy to daven there. And a man comes by one day, a black man, and says to me, is there a reason why you don't use the chapel? What am I going to tell him across there? So symbols, he says, why don't you try tomorrow? So I come back the next day, and the cross is on the side, on the floor, on the side, out. The Bible is open to Psalm 139. Whither shall I flee from thy presence? If I ascend to heaven, thou art there. Wonderful, wonderful. So I daven, and I really davened with geschmack there. And the big King James Bible was on there. And I'm finished davening, and I turn the pages of the Psalms to Psalm 100, which is Mizmor LeTodah, the Thanksgiving Psalm. Thank you, And I put the cross back, and then I knew that I could take it off and put it up. I had thought this man was a janitor there, and he was a nice person. So I want to take the course, so I make an appointment with Dean Thurman, and I walk in, and there he is. He gives me a mug of coffee, wants to find out what I want, and I'm trying to say in the most polite way, how can I open my neshama to one of those Christians who are going to try and convert me, I can't say it that way. So I said, Dean, I'd like to take your course, especially with the labs, but my anchor chains, I'm not sure my anchor chains are long enough. So this side of the hand was very light, and this one was very dark. Back and forth several times, and I'm sitting there like, nafshi bekapai tamid. I'm wondering what's going to happen, what is he going to say? And then he says to me, don't you trust the Ruach HaKodesh? I wasn't laughing, I was shaking. I walked out, and you can imagine the battle inside, trying to figure out, am I a Jew because God wants me to be a Jew, or I wouldn't care? And I want to tell you something. There was a lot of reaction formation among survivors of the Shoah who were saying, you forsook us, but we won't forsake you. You'll see how we will keep everything, you know, like that, with that attitude. So, trusting the Ruach HaKodesh is a hard thing. And I came back and I said yes, and I took that lab with him. And he played some beautiful Bach music. Thank God I didn't know what it was. Jesus, the joy of my desire. You know, it's a beautiful piece. Da 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 dee, da da do da da da. Right. So, but then the second record that came down on the 12-inch changer that he used was Kol Nidre. Bruch's Kol Nidre, which was like saying, Zalman, relax. So labs, very clear, are important. What were the labs that Hasidim did? That was the Farbrengen. There were times in the Farbrengen that Fritz Perls would have said, that's good Gestalt work that's being done. Because while we didn't have to sit particularly in the hot chair, but when the mashpia would start talking about a flaw in behavior and attitude and feeling, we knew when the shoe fit, you know, it was very strong experience and so on. So the Farbrengen was a way in which we had labs. I believe that in every case, if people would allow for labs in liberal arts, it would be a wonderful thing. They have labs in chemistry and physics, in biology, botany, but they don't have labs when it comes to the humanities, and that's a real pity. Could you imagine if in a course on philosophy, instead of telling you what Plato and Aristotle have said, they would give you the issues to ponder, to say, what do you think, before you get the answer from the other. Or if a teacher in geography would tell the students about a beautiful place, someplace far away, and the teacher would then be able to say, and now go and daydream. You are on a safari there. See if you can see in your mind the trees that I described and the animals that are there and so on. Could you imagine how much more that lesson would stick instead of the teacher saying, stop daydreaming? Daydreaming is very important. It's a form of meditation that's a good meditation. So I collected a number of these things that I did with my students at the University of Manitoba, and I'll tell you about them, but I want to then get back to right here and now. One of the things that I did was I took the students, and especially when I did this at Brandeis, it was wonderful. Brandeis has 3 chapels. If you've ever seen, they look very much one like the other, Protestant, Catholic, and Jewish. The Jewish one has a bigger belly to accommodate more Jewish students. But other than that, from afar, the architect did a beautiful job with that. I would gather the students in front of those 3 chapels, and I would blindfold them. And then I would twist them around a few times so they shouldn't know where and what and who. And then I'd walk them to the door of the chapel, and they had to explore it without the use of sight. Now, take a look how important that is, because you want to bring it back to the body, you want to get a sense. When you come to the Roman Catholic chapel and you can smell incense, or you come to Jewish chapel behind the Om Kodesh and you could smell the Havdalah and the wine, you know. And then they had to write out what it was like, and that was a remarkable thing to do. Explore religious space and content without the use of the eyes. One of the problems I had in teaching psychology of religion, and it's the same problem that you will also encounter in your own way, is that when we read the texts such as Varieties of Religious Experience and Perennial Philosophy by Huxley, and the kids knew the words, but they didn't know what it was talking about. Several generations before, if you would have said silent meeting, people would have known. If you would have said chanting and responsive chanting and so on and so forth, people would have known, but they didn't know anymore. So I had to make sure that they would have these experiences. So one of them was a silent meeting, and they read the material that was in the Friends Intelligencer, where someone by the name of Pennington described just how you do that. Then I would give the people a psalm in English, and I would ask them to recite that psalm in 7 different ways. One, for instance, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Another, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. You know, you get the idea that in each time, like an actor would do that. My daughter Miriam once heard me teach a group Divinology. So she was at that time taking drama lessons in schools in New York. Then she said to me, Abba, I know what you did. I said, what? She said, you taught the people how to daven by the Stanislavski method. No, do you understand? She was in I forgot the name of the guy who was the ran that school.
Morley.
It was
This was the Actors Studio in New York.
So by saying that, what she was saying, it's very clear. So how do you do it? When King David describes Bevorcho Mifnei Avshalom Beno, he's running away from Absalom, who's about trying to kill him. Or LeDavid Beshano says Tamer Lifnei Avimelech Vayegorshei Vayelech. David is acting crazy when he's taken as a captive by the Philistines. So can you imagine? You place yourself in that thing. You make all kinds of shtick. And then Eve did such a beautiful job telling the kids the story of don't throw me the briar patch. Yeah, and so David HaMelech plays this kind of geschäft, and so the king says, it's a famous phrase everybody uses in Israel, Hechaser mishugayim ani, do I like crazy people, you know? And so they throw him out, and that's how, and I follow him until he finally gets to his camp, and the people feed him, and he burps up, and they hand him the lyre, and he begins, they know already, now comes the psalm, you know? And the psalm is being created. That is when it's fresh. But when you read it on paper, it's like freeze-dried. You know, it doesn't have any time yet, so it's really important to bring it into life, and that's why I asked the people to do the psalm in 7 attitudes. The 7th time, I asked them to read the psalm and now use the right attitude for the sentence that you... When you say, the Lord is my shepherd, you don't say it with the same attitude my God, why hast thou forsaken me, you know? So learning to, when you get a chance, take a look in in my paradigm shift, there is a section that's called Symphonic Score for the Amida. It gives you a variety of levels in which prayer gets said, and meaning, and what you do with your body, and so on and so forth. Because it takes introspection when you're doing it well to start saying, so what did I actually do? How did I pronounce it? What did I feel? Into what attitude I put my body? And you see that all these things count. So I asked them the last time around to find the right attitude for the sentence that they were saying, and then to say it with that attitude, which means that if you have the words, and then you have the feeling, and so the feeling track is there to accompany the words, and that's what we talk about when we say kavanah. Okay? Kavanah is when the meaning and feeling track are added to the words. Okay? You need one more thing, to feel that you're saying this in the presence of God. This is why I'd like you to keep in mind, as I keep in mind when I'm involved in teaching a group, that this call is being monitored for quality purposes. Okay? Az nidbaru yira Hashem, you know, that this is, I want to say only such stuff that the Rebbeinu Shalom should have nachas from. So you see that these are the ways in which you put these things together. All these words are in Asiyah, feeling is in Yetzirah, the meaning of mind is in Bria, and doing this in the presence of the living God, that's in Atzilut, and now you have the way in which they go together. Then I had a beautiful Zen recording, a Zen flute recording, and I would play that one for the people and ask them to watch what is arising as a result of the music for them. Sometimes I would add sights and sounds to that. I used to have a color organ, you know, that would turn around and would shine on a picture. And the picture, though static, would become dynamic when the blues become stronger and when the reds become stronger, moving in and out. So all of this is in order to tell the everyday shopping mall consciousness to step aside for a while and to let another kind of consciousness in. So when I was in Krakow with a group of people, and we were bringing, this was before the Iron Curtain there, it was still in communist Poland, then we did some workshops there with people, and they turned out to be wonderful. And of course you go to Auschwitz and you take a look and see what's doing there. At the end, they had, for the finale of our time together, they had the Polish Radio Symphony come and play Mozart's Requiem. And I was asked to introduce that music. I had a translator from English to Polish, and I told the people that what does sacred music mean? There are some things that words can't express. But if you allow yourself to listen with an inner ear, with the ear of the heart, and then the music takes you to places, you know, and you allow yourself to go with that, you're not, don't try and be a maven on the music. How well is he playing that? You know, that has no time. But if you get to the place where you can allow yourself, and Mozart, no matter what kind of a fool and paskodyak he was, you know, nevertheless, when he does his music and you float with the music, it's wonderful. Barbara's Adagio, or anytime, you know, it'll go take me to places. So, music and inner prayer. then to really learn how to do prayer of intercession. How do you pray for people? There are the simple ways and there are the more complex ways. The simple way is a story about Reb Nachman. He was sick. He had tuberculosis. And he was sitting with his Hasidim and his grandson came in and he said, pray for Zayda to get well. And the kid says, yeah, if you give me your gold watch, I'll pray for you. So the Hasidim go, he's becoming already a Rebbe, he wants to take, they're putting it down. But Reb Nachman takes it serious, gives him the gold watch. And the child says, Rebbeinu Shalom, my Zayda is sick, you can heal him, please heal him, amen. And puts the watch in his pocket. The Hasidim go again, like this. Is that a prayer for this, a gold watch? So Reb Nachman says, what do you think I do? When you come to me and you ask me to pray, what do you think I do? It's just a wonderful story. That's the lowest level of intercession. There are other levels of intercession for this we can't go into right now. It has really to do with, how would I say, birthing the healing and getting it through the narrows of Gevurah, which is always judging, You pray for someone to be healed and then you say, but he hasn't learned his lesson, he hasn't given up smoking, he's still eating that stuff. You know what I'm saying? Where the Gevurah comes in, it's very hard to bring down healing in that kind of a prayer. So you have to watch out, you have to learn about it more. Body movement and tongues. Body movement. I begin with a group and we play the hokey pokey. You put your right hand in, you put the right, and so on and so forth. And after the people had done it the first time, I would then start saying, okay, now lie down on the floor. And I put on the music of Bach's Art of the Fugue. Ba, 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 ba. The first voice comes in and you dance with your right arm. Second voice comes in, you take in your left arm. Third voice comes in, you lift up your leg and you dance with the right leg. And so here the people were lying on the floor like upside down bugs, with their feet up and dancing, each one limb to another voice in the Art of the Fugue. Then I asked the people, through a whole bunch of other things, to do dance a minuet with God. Da 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 da. It was the 19th nervous breakdown done in classical style. It was a beautiful piece of music. And then I had a piece that was what I would call gas chamber music. It was by Lalo Schifrin in the Jazz Suite on the Mass. And at one point, the voices are coming, they're screaming, trumpet, and so on and so forth. And when the music is over, I asked the people to fall down on the floor and to lie there for a while. And I played bardo music. Snatches of this, snatches of that, that would sort of upset the mind of people. Do you want to follow this? And another thought comes in, another idea. And then finally getting a little quiet. And then I played some resurrection music for them to get up from that thing and to move with that. Yiyu leratzonim refi were the words that went with that. It's a very beautiful piece of music. Then I asked the people to sit in chairs set up like pews. And I said, if I catch you move, you're out of here. And I started to put on some beautiful music that was pretty happy music, and I asked them to dance unseen. On the inside, and that was so wonderful because at that point people realized they could go to any shul, church, what have you, and be as freilich as they want, and nobody can catch them at that. Another time I would have a kind of stirring music not easy to hear, and asked people to allow sound to come in and to blend with that until they were sort of speaking in voices, in tongues. We did some Sufi breathing and chanting. And we tried 4 kinds of meditation. One was ruminative, the other one was discursive, the other one was transcendental, and the other one was contemplation. I'll just give you short definitions for them. Imagine you've eaten and you say, V'rich Rachmana Lahona Malka de Alma Moradai Pita. And you go over that like you're chewing your cud. Berich, 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 berich. And you see all the meanings that you can see in berich, all the meanings in Rachmana, you know, and you put it, and you go over that, and you chew the cud. That's called, when people say, I'll ruminate on it. You know, that's a very wonderful form of, I mean, Ashrei Yoshvei V'techa Od Yalalucha Selah. I could ruminate on that quite a while. Give me Adon Olam Asher Malach B'terem Kol Yisir Nivra. Leit Nasa B'chefza Kol Azay Melech Shemo Nikra V'achei Kichlot HaKol Levado Yimloch Nora. Ooh, I can go and spend time chewing on that, okay? That's ruminative. Discursive. I'm trying to tell myself it's time that you should do this better than you have. I'm giving myself a Musar sermon. I don't know if you've ever I'm sure you have experienced that, when conscience bothers us and so on and so forth. And there is that kind of thing that we say, and it's in our literature, if you found some medieval literature, they call it a poem that's a tochacha. You're telling your own soul, oh my soul, why do you not da 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 da, okay? So that's discursive. Transcendental, that was hot in those days with Maharishi and so on and so forth, so I left that alone. I always had the sense that the Maharishi meditation is good for jocks. You know, they used to have meditation timers, 20 minutes, and it was all to get you to the place where you could hop.
Can I tell a brief story? Can I tell a brief story?
Yes.
My mother had been persuaded by friends of hers, at least try, they're coming to San Diego, go, let them give you a mantra. My mother goes, and she is resistant to ceremony, the white handkerchief, but she goes, she does the whole thing. She is given a mantra and sent aside to begin to use it. She's been meditating for many years already. And she's trying this mantra, getting a bad feeling in her, but no, this is not the right one. Somebody gave me the wrong mantra. No. She goes back to the person who gave it to her and says, wrong one. This person is totally indignant. Says, it is the right one. No, it's the wrong one. If you can't give me another one, then give me my money back and I'll go. And the person is beside himself and finally has a fit, gives her the money back, and is seen running after her out of the building saying, and don't you dare use that mantra! Which was my mother's story with TM.
Well, I want to say another thing about that I felt was problematic. At that time, there were some people who didn't like the fact that the mantras were in Sanskrit, and they wanted to have TM with Jewish stuff. So they went and got something together that they called JM, Jewish meditation, and they got a hechsher from Lubavitch about it. And I was upset because Lubavitch has methods of meditation that were so much beyond that thing which... But on the other hand, it was the time when Dr. Benson was talking about the relaxation response, and that is good for ulcers and so on and so forth. So Gesundheit, if that works for you. But contemplation, that's a whole other thing. That kind of a thing that's a beholding. Beholding. כי ארץ שמך מעשה אצבעותיך, ירח וכוכבים אשר כננת. I look at the sky, the handiwork of your fingers, the moon and the stars that you have set aside, and at the same time I see how vast all this is and how small I am in relation to that, and I go to Ma Enosh Kitis Kereno Ven Adam Kitiv Kedeno. What is a human being that you should take notice of him, you know? So these are the kinds of contemplative things, and along with that goes Shiviti gazing. Just a short word about Shiviti gazing, and I hope that some of these things that you will try them out. Mm-hmm. And if you look at the way in which we see the Sfirot, we always have Chesed at the right hand. But if it is Shiviti Hashem lenegdi tamid, then Chesed should be at my left. Right? If the tree of life is facing me, then Chesed is there, which is at my left. Mm-hmm. So the answer to that one is, no, I'm not so much looking at as I'm looking through in. V'ra'ita et achori upanai lo yerau. You know, you've seen my backside and not the front. You walk into the Shiviti. Get the idea? The Yud is the head, the shoulders and the arm are the Hey, the body is the Vav, the pelvis and legs are the other Hey. You walk into that, and then you see what you see from there. It's not you. It's not something that the ego can take credit for, but at the same time, it can also be a very awesome situation. I mentioned things about breath. One of the things I got from reading Rabbi Yosef Ibn Chikatella in the
Gates of Light. Gates of Light. Gates of Light. Shara Or.
Right, in the Shara Or, right, where he where it points out that Yud is small, Hey is breadth and big, Vav is small, again narrow, and the other Hey is big. So that led me to see breath that way, that all the breath out of the lungs is Yud. Hey, holding the breath and sending it through the body. Vav. Out breath, Hey. And if you can do your breathing in that way with that awareness, and not necessarily stopping at the points, but just following as the breath goes with the letters that go along with that, that can be a very powerful thing. There's another one that, God willing, a breath thing, when you're going to get your ordination as Maggidim, I'll tell you more about that. I wrote furthermore, chanting zikr or mantras, and I don't mean it quiet like so much like TM, but to go with the drums and so on and so forth, and to feel that. I wrote in those days, the assignment was, imagine you are on a LSD trip. What would happen in your imagination? Where would you go? What would you experience? Another lab that we did was the Latihan. We followed the Subud people, and you separate the men to one side, the women to another side, and you say, begin, and then whatever comes into your mind to do, jumping around, people really go wonderfully crazy. That was sort of stolen by Rajneesh when he called it chaotic meditation. He kept the men and the women together, and that always created some problems. Another one was to eat without utensils, and to pay attention to the body and to the food, and to, another one was to feed each other. Nobody puts food in their own mouth. And it's such an amazing thing, because on the one hand, you don't like that, you want to do it yourself, right? On the other hand, that kind of surrender to that. And which piece do you want in your mouth at this point? You don't talk about it. You just think about it and see what happens between the feeder and the fed, okay? We did baptisms and water disciplines. I would take people in to the swimming pool of the university, and we would do things of that sort, you know, to stay under the water as long as you could, and at the same time offer some prayers, try and leave behind some bad habits and stuff of that sort, as that kind of a mikveh. We did things about spiritualism and the Ouija board. I sent people to the spiritualist church, and sometimes these things were profound, and other times they were ridiculous. So it depends how genuine the people were and what they knew to do. I asked people to find out about astrology too. And there are all kinds of typologies. Some people got into the Enneagram, some people got into the Jungian things and the, what was it called, that Myers-Briggs thing and so on. And then they had some labs on ESP and psychokinesis. And these were wonderful things that we did. I would ask them to take home labs, hierarchy of values, sit down and see what are how would you rank the values in your life. Inner audit and examination of conscience. And that I gave out to people before the high holidays. And I called it What I Know of Me and My Gods. When I am disappointed and frustrated, I find solace in food, tidying up, going shopping, going to movies, sitting with my significant objects, being with my friend, being with my love. What is it that you do when you're disappointed and frustrated? Which animal best describes you when you're feeling high, when you're feeling low, when you're feeling medium? On the Jungian scale, who are you? So I'll give you a copy of that if you want.
Yes.
What is it like to feel to be the guru? What is it like to feel to be the chela? And write about that. Imagine what would it be like, this one gave people a lot of trouble. What would it be like if you were to go through an important conversion? You know, we always have a sense of this is territory we don't want to visit. But what would it be like? You know, because if you don't go to the edge of that, you can't affirm your own faith too well either. Another one was, you're Mashiach, what would you do? Okay. Another one was looking at past history through God's eyes. What is it like to try and do prophecy? And write out what you could remember about past reincarnation and imagine future reincarnations for yourself. So these were the things that I had on those labs. So now I want to go to another place, and then we'll share a little bit more. In 1975, in May, was the 10th yard site of Martin Buber. And Art Waskow at that point was working for a think tank in Washington. And he invited us to come and to give papers, talks, about the meaning of Buber for us. I wrote back and said, I'll come, but not to give a paper. I want to do a lab in Eidowing. Because, you know, you can read about Eidau, but what is it like when you do that? So we did some wonderful labs that had to do sometimes with sitting and looking into each other's eyes, just quiet, watching what comes up in the mind, which goes sometimes, "Oi, soon they'll know all my secrets," or "How can I use that person for my purposes?" Or, you know, all that kind of stuff coming up. And then we would talk about it to each other, say, "This is coming up," and I put it aside. Until you finally got to that gaze into the other that didn't have any more results that you expected. Another thing was, and this one I really want to recommend that you do. I asked people to begin to be in pairs, A and B. A would begin a half a sentence, and B would finish that sentence not knowing what A is going to say. Then B would begin the next sentence hooked onto that, and then A would finish that one and start the next one, okay? So, with the people that you're sitting next, I'm going to have you do that, but I want to illustrate it to you a little bit. And so, Charna, are you willing to do it with me? Okay, start a sentence.
Life is a delight.
Especially if you can share it with other people. And when the people you're with and you love them, then
our hearts open and our minds settle. And when this occurs, something shifts.
First of all, we don't see things the same way as we saw them before, and we feel them differently. But then sometimes we meet something that
challenges our worldview and allows us the capacity to see fresh and anew the moment. And when this happens,
then sometimes you are happy with it and sometimes you're upset, and then you have to watch what
comes up, because you're not always in control of what's going on in the unconscious mind.
Okay, go do that with find your partner, and for the next 5 minutes have that kind of a conversation.
I try to assimilate it to the best of my ability.
You're done?
And use it as a vehicle for self-expression.
How deeply engaged I wanted to be there.
Transforming what I think I am.
There's sort of a realization that all is good in this moment. But then light goes out.
I can't find it somewhere. So I look in my partner's eyes and I see it again. And all of a sudden, everything that I thought
Is really light.
And later that day, I talked about with a friend about
To challenge myself.
being willing to admit simple things, because
well, sometimes it's the simplest things that are the hardest to admit. And on the other hand,
Today, that is a choice.
at least they can be simple to articulate when we let ourselves.
What I just saw is the best example, because the partner with whom you do that, you really begin to love. You know? You get to see how you're doing mind together. When I was in Vancouver, with that thing with the Dalai Lama and the people there, then there was a time when young people were posing questions. And there was this young woman, Chinese extraction, who asked me a question. And it was a kind of question that I had a sense that deep down she knew the answer also. So I came up to her and I said, have you ever seen Star Trek? And she says, yes. Do you know what a mind meld is? Let's do a mind meld. And then she spoke. And she gave the answer. And it was wonderful. You see, the element is that you can't help when that's a kind of spiritual intimacy that's happening. And the more of that that's happening, the more easy it is to also talk about deeper questions that we have, that we want to share. At which point I want to say, you will not be good Maggidim if you don't have at least a bet din of good chaverim. You have to have 3 good chaverim with whom you can talk from time to time about how it's going and what's not so easy and so on and so forth. Before Rosh Hashanah, I make my call to 3 people in my life to say, what is it that you need to tell me of what you've noticed about how this year went for me that I couldn't see by myself? Because that's what you need chaverim for, you know. The Rebbe said this so beautifully. He says, when you have a chaver, it's 2 Yetzer HaTovs against 1 Yetzer Hara. And you always win. So that's an important part. You see that the same thing can also be done with melody. Not with everybody, but I think, Shira, you and I are going to do that. Okay? La la li la la. La 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 la. La 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 la. La 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 la. La 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 la. La 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 la. La 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 la. Yaram param 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 param. Okay, you're seated. Okay. That is also in a way in which I don't know what's going to come, you know, but the issue of being able to stay very much in the here and now at this point, when someone says a half a sentence and you don't know what they're going to say, and at the same time, neurosociologists are telling us about the mirror neurons that are going on in our head. And when we are doing stuff of that sort, in order to be able to stay in touch and to do that sharing, the neurons in my brain and the neurons in your brain were sort of tuning into each other. Do you see? Did I tell you yesterday about the signs of the zodiac thing? No? One of the things, if you work with a group, you'll find really well worth if you ask people to make a circle and arrange themselves according to their birthdays. So you begin with January 1st and so on, you go round and round until you have December 31st there. By the time you're through, everybody will be in their place in the zodiac. And the amount of harmony that creates is remarkable. Because, you know, even if you, and I would like to see this happen in Congress. If I had the clout to do that, I would take all the seats out as they are now in the Senate and arrange them in such a way that the people would have to sit according to their birthdays. Could you imagine when the 2 Arieses, one is a Republican, the other one is a Democrat, sit together, how much more they would, the aisle in the middle is such a terrible thing. If you could eliminate that and go with the zodiac, it would be organic.
Yeah.
And that's a very important part in the sharing. Let me see
On a
whatever
practical
else
level,
Huh?
just a congregational meeting would certainly be useful.
Yes, I'm saying with whichever form you can bring people into that harmony, that's great. Sometimes when I was doing eldering stuff, I would have people start with from the youngest to the oldest. And then the youngest would honor the people who's a little older, and then the two of them would go to the next one until the whole group would stand before the oldest person and honor them. The oldest person in turn would give them a blessing. So you can imagine how beautiful it was. And there was once a woman who always felt so not worthy, and then she becomes the person to whom everybody gives the kuvit, and then she comes back and gives the bracha. It was a remarkable thing. I had a situation at Lama Foundation, and there was a guy by the name of Sadi Klotz, and you may have seen sometimes an advertisement by him. He does the Aramaic Jesus prayer. And they do the sacred dances, the Sufi dances. And there's a woman by the name of Tasnim Hernandez, and she too is a teacher of the Sufi dances. So the three of us were at Lama Foundation at one point. Sufi Sam was the one who pointed out that all three Abrahamic religions, are like three circles intertwined with each other. So I asked the people to line up and choose if they want to be in the Christian, even for the time alone. The Christian side, the Muslim side, and the Jewish side. The Jews did Ya Melech, Ya Malach, Ya Yemeloch Leolam Va'ed, and with movement. I'll show it to you later. The Christians did Glory Father, Glory Son, Glory Spirit, 3 in 1. That went with the same rhythm. And the Muslims said Ya Rahim, Ya Rahman, Dul Jalal Va'al Ikram, and with the movements that go along. We did this for about 20 minutes, and you can imagine how powerful it was with these circles being intertwined and all moving the body in the same way, but chanting with the same rhythm, but different words. How powerful it was, what it brought together. Somewhere, sometimes you'll check with me about the transpersonal mass I did in Bombay.
Okay.
Here we were in Bombay, and there was a meeting of transpersonal psychologists. Reb Shlomo and Reb David Zeller and I were there, and then we were given the Jewish evening to do. And Reb Shlomo did what he usually does, stories and music, and so did Reb David Zeller. I asked myself, how can I mediate to the people the experience of the four worlds without davening from the siddur? So I did what I called a transpersonal mass. I took them through body stuff, through feeling stuff, through mind stuff, and then the Atzilus thing. And each time, the lights in the auditorium were lowered a little bit, and I lit another candle up front. By the time it was altogether dark and 4 candles were burning, I had a shofar that I borrowed from the community there. And I asked Paul Horn, who was there, wonderful flute player, to come up and help me out. And he and I did a dialogue. I with the shofar and he with the flute. And I asked the people to speak in tongues to let the sound out. It is an amazing piece there. And I want you to hear it because of learning whenever you are involved with celebrations. The one thing that Maggidim didn't do in the past and that you are bound to have to do is to lead people in rituals and celebrations. You do this with the drumming already, and I'm sure that each one of you has gotten some form in which you do that. And so when that comes about, it's good to know, when you listen to it, you get the feel of where we were at that time. To enlarge the awareness, the social awareness of this group, and then beyond to this neighborhood, and then the whole town, and so on, so the whole county, and to get the feel that you remember how many degrees of separations have you got from anyone in the world, before long, the people we know, and the people they know, and the people they know, and so on, before long we are connected with the whole world. And that's such an important part, to expand and to have a sense that I am not my ego, I am a cell of the larger body of Earth.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let me see, is there anything else I wanted to say today? Yes, try out with each other also labs in giving brachas.
Mm-hmm.
So you might want to make half a circle is on the inside, the other half a circle is on the outside. The inside faces the people on the outside people are facing the people on the inside, and each time after you finish, you take one step aside and you exchange brachas with the other person. And that can be a very, very powerful thing, because you then learn, you don't come with a formula. You stay in front of the other person and you get a feel for what bracha they need. Sometimes it's scary.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I like to do from time to time is have people roll the Torah back and forth until they come to a place, and then point to it, and I would read to them. That's sort of the I Ching of that. So you can imagine two situations. One was a guy who had a question whether he should stay as an English major or go into technology. And so he rolls it back and forth, and points, and I start reading. And God said to Moshe, speak to Bezalel how to build a Mishkan. So he wound up working for Apple. The other guy was much harder because he had psoriasis. And he found that place that said, send forth from your camp anyone who has a tzara'at, who has, they should go out of the camp. So I'm biting my tongue. Am I going to read this? Am I not going to read this? But I figured the Rebbeinu Shalom wants him to hear it, so I did. With trepidation. A few months later, he told me that it made a real shift. That when he heard it's time to drive out the guy with the psoriasis outside of the camp, in other words, not to hold this anymore, not to see this as something you can't get rid of, and so on, that this made a real shift and a change for him. So, don't you trust the Ruach HaKodesh? It's always the question that starts coming up. I think I'm done with what I want to say, and let me see now what issues come up for you. All right, please.
I'd like to segue this into our group immediately. You've said in the past that when you hear a story, the best way to own it is to apply it as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
I want to say that I've already redesigned Torah study for Saturday morning, which I'm leading, because we're having a Shabbaton in Fort Collins.
Yes.
And so I've redesigned the Torah study. I really ask everybody to participate because it's going to be interesting, based on using this as a laboratory. And we're going to explore things in a different way. So I want to say two things. First of all, may the Shabbaton committee meet today and kind of design so we can integrate some of these laboratory ideas. And I also want to say, since we've talked a lot this week about the rebuilding of vessels to hold in incoming light, it seems that these living laboratories are the best way to begin building those vessels, because you allow unconscious mind to come forth of that which is holding us back and to integrate it through the body so the body gains its strength. And so you have fed perfectly into where we're going.
Good.
And I want to thank you for that. So I just wanted to say that as we go into questions.
Please.
Can you ever be a prophet in your hometown?
Ever is a big word. Sometimes you can. If I had to say the percentages, I would say 10% of the time you might. But that can only be for the people. You see, there is something about prophecy that when the Gemara says, after the destruction of the temple, prophecy was given to crazy people and to children, you know. So you have a notion that when somebody says, I have prophecy for you, that they will be judged as being crazy. Now, I feel that all of us here are crazy in the way that if we were to talk to the people in the language in which we talk here, going to Walmart and talking to a person from that stuff, they would say, what are you talking about? You're crazy, right? But what is so wonderful is that with each other we are normal. So there may be some people to whom you're normal, and for them you can really do it. The others, you can't convince that easy, because look, when you understand how strongly defended the ego is, and how strong the habit is. Habit is very, very powerful, and if you want to derail people from habits that are not the best with your prophecy, you can imagine what resistance you will find. Okay? Yes.
Yes. Yesterday, I did not contribute when you asked people, so what is your Maggidic work?
Yeah.
And my Maggidic work is being myself, but with children. I teach in a synagogue's Sunday school program, Judaica to the last couple of years, 4th, 5th graders. I am a nanny to two of my grandchildren. And I have been struggling with how to be a good teacher, how not to be in the front of the classroom all the time. Whether I'm being the nanny and, you know, trying to keep the kids from jumping off the counters, or whether I'm in the classroom. We don't use textbooks. It's a very, they trust their teachers. We have a list, a curriculum that's a list. These are the topics you shall cover in the 2-year program called 4th, 5th grade, or 2nd, 3rd grade, whatever. And it's very challenging not to lecture all the time when you don't have textbooks. And as you know, the greatest thing to hear if you've given a talk to a group is someone coming up and saying, you talked to me. That's exactly what I needed, what I've been looking for, what I've been Googling for. So, Baruch Hashem.
There is a level of imagination that you can always bring back to the kids, you know. How do you imagine that? And so like a Socratic method of, how do you imagine it happened when they came to the Red Sea, you know? How do you imagine what happened at Mount Sinai? How do you imagine it happened when they found a little cruse of oil in the temple and so on? And you'll see how it comes out, and the likelihood is so much will match the midrash that we already have on that. That you'll see the Ruach HaKodesh is even in the kids, yeah? All right, please.
Hi, my name is Yael, Rabbi. So I have a question for you and for the group, actually. And that is how to balance the extreme urgency of our times. For instance, it's raining oil in Louisiana right now. And how to balance that urgency with always knowing that moving from a place of fear and urgency doesn't tend to gather good results. and that there are things that need to be done in God's time and space, even though we want it tomorrow and think it should be done tomorrow, especially in the face of the exponential speed with which everything is happening in our world. So I'm caught as a Maggid between going, okay, I can affect, even in groups, a certain percentage of people in those groups, and we've already spoken about what percentage of those people will actually take action based on that once they leave the room, because they're stepping back into a normative context which promotes apathy and it's overwhelming, and what are they to do? So how to balance that out with my urgency to want to get in my car and even say, wow, I love all of you, this is great. I need to go to Louisiana right now, and I need to do something, because I just can't sit here any longer and just and talk, and it's beautiful and it's the wisdom, but there's also this compelling need for action. I don't have a vessel for that. And so for me, what can happen is that I can feel a paralysis set in also for me. And so I'm working with, where do I create my vessels, and what sequence do I create these vessels at? And they have to kind of operate at the same time. We actually have to start spiritually multitasking because we can't, that's not the world we live in. We live in a different time frame now.
So, She'elat Chacham, Chatzi Shuva. The question of a wise person is already half of the answer itself. So, she Yael asked a question to all of us here, so anyone feels a response, please give it to her first.
I think we all want to hear from you first.
No.
I think we all struggle with a balance of where we are and in the four worlds at any given moment. What is the balance of the four worlds within ourselves at the given moment in the world of asiyah and action and doing something? For many of us, at least for myself, there's it seems like a pendulum of tikkun ha'olam and tikkun hanefesh. What we're doing in healing ourself with doing spiritual work, helping others, but there's also that getting involved and fixing the world, and everyone has a balance at any given moment, and I think we need to follow that Ruach HaKodesh on where is it directing us? Is the Asiyah strong at this moment and directing us to action? If that's what we're feeling, let it flow. My opinion.
I believe that a healer, or Maggid, if you will, is one who holds the rays of hope in the face of despair. And so as the urgency moves through me, and I seek to action, my job as a Maggid and caring of the souls for people is creating space where they can feel that hope, where they can believe and not allow that urgency to turn into fear or false evidence appearing real, and to cultivate those who are called to action, helping support them to do so, cultivating people who just need to stay out of their own neuroses to do so, and to kind of guide that towards the soul in front of me from that place. And to have that sense of emunah, not from that old paradigm, but that new paradigm, that knowing that that all is for good.
Anyone else? Please.
The way I heard your question is that you were saying, how do I deal with these, get up and go? No, I need to be here kind of thing. And what strikes me is when I feel that urgency or that franticness or whatever is to touch back into simultaneously, I have these other things that are going on. I have to listen to them also. One of them's going to be stronger. so that I just don't go running off. I move with the other parts of me supporting that. And that when I'm, not in the action mode, even though I can talk about this, doesn't mean I do it, I'm not berating myself for not being in the action mode, but I'm acknowledging that it's very important.
Yeshua. Let me weigh in a little bit in that, and then we move on to something else. I like the word marching orders. My marching orders are not the same as the ones that Arthur Waskow and let's say and Lerner, Michael Lerner have. Sometimes they are urging me, why don't you do what we are doing? And I have a feeling they're doing what they're doing. Once you have an organismic understanding of society, Bichlal, in general, you have to have organismic thinking. When Descartes was teaching us about the universe, he saw it as clockwork. But now the better model is the organismic model. Then we can say, like I said, that every religion is a vital organ of the planet, and then you see that in this organism, there are some people who are doing this and some people who are doing that. And so therefore, I have to understand what are my marching orders. Or to put it in Hasidic language, it is like saying, where do my Shoresh HaNeshama connect? So the recognition that we need a minyan. Sometimes we used to do that when we had a davenology session, that some people would be in Chochmah, some people would be in Bina, some people would be in Tiferet and Da'at. So we had the whole arrangement, so that when they did Atah Chonein La'adam Da'at, the Chochmah people were praying that. The Bina people were praying Hashivenu. The Chesed people said Salach Lanu, just according to follow that thing. And it became very clear that it takes a tree of life, as it were, It takes a tree of life to work together. And so the issue is, on the other hand, the problem, that we like to talk to the people who are doing the same thing, because we're always afraid that the other guys are going to schlep us into their thing. But it's really important to be able to be open to the people who are doing the other kind of work, and to say, I'm doing this, and this is what I can share with you from my marching orders. And you have your marching orders, and you go there, and that's a very important part that I'd want to say. Yes?
Thank you, Reb Zalman. I have a question about applying some of the davenology exercises to a traditional Shabbat service.
Yeah.
For the people, for those of us who lead synagogues that expect a certain tefillah. I know, for example, Reb Tirtza's shul, you suggested that the drash happen earlier in the service so that there's more time to take it in.
Yeah.
Things like that. How could we do some of the exercises maybe before Baruch Hu, or how do you see them integrating?
First, I want to tell you a time when I loused it up. I was so excited by seeing what the Quakers are doing that I asked myself, where is it in our tradition? And it's written there that Chasidim Harishonim hayu shoim sha'achas kodem atfilah. They were spending an hour before prayer in silence. Great. Then the Rambam makes it very clear that when you pray, you should be praying for what you really need. When you pray for what you really need, it's a mitzvah d'oraita, it's a biblical command. When you're just reciting what is in the siddur, it's a rabbinic command. But the biblical command is higher. So pray for the things you want. And the easiest thing for which we don't have to have a lot of preparation is Modeh Ani. according to the Shulchan Aruch, even before you wash your hands, you can say Modani lefanecha. So Thanksgiving is great. One Friday night I decided to tell the shamas no Sidurim today. And I tell the people about sitting silent and speaking up when something hits them and so on and so forth. And we do this for about 20 minutes in the davening, sitting silent. Only one person got up, and he was a refugee from Austria, and he said, "Are we not all like a camera obscura, hermetically sealed by our organs and senses? If only we were to make a small pinhole in there, not only would the light come in from outside, but the whole beautiful picture would be reflected within." And he sat down. It was so wonderful, And he got it. Pitchu li kechuda shel machat v'ani eftach lachem kepitcha shel olam. He got it just right. Then we sit there and I say, you make your prayer. Don't pray out loud for what you really need, because then you won't really pray for what you really need. Pray quietly for what you want. And then when you come to the end, you say, and let us say Amen, and we'll say Amen for your intention. Whatever you prayed for, Amen, may you get it. And five minutes go by, and the first tentative, let us say Amen. A few more, let us say Amen. And after a while more, let us say Amen. Then I open up the ark and I invite people to go up and to count their blessing. Thank you, God, for this and for that out loud. Just that I got from the Christian scientists, who were giving testimony of healing and so on. In the end, even the young president of the shul, got up and said, "Thank you for having such a rabbi who brings these things to us." On Thursday, I get a letter, a special delivery, that says, we have 432 Sidurim and they are meant to be used. Okay, I didn't prepare the people at all. So my answer to you is, when you bring in something, the first thing is you should have a group that's interested in learning about liturgy and spirituality. And if they meet during the week and they try out something, then you are not the one who pushes it. For a long time I've been showing people how to daven in English with a melody. Blessed art thou, Lord, who healest the sick of thy people Israel. At first it was sort of funny to people. They were not used to that. They were used to more, "Grant that we lie down in peace," like to try to be fake Episcopalians. But then, when I started to do it with the melody, it really worked. So one evening I'm working in Cherry Hill with a congregation, and it's going wonderful, and they like it, and they go with me. And I talked with the rabbi, and I said, "You should do that again." So later on I meet him, he says, "Did you do it again?" He says, "I tried it once and it fell flat." I asked him, "Did you daven at home with the melody?" He says, "No." So I said, "When you did it with so much anxiety that you transmitted the anxiety to the people, and you felt funny in it. You weren't used to it, and it's very important." The business of habits, there's a beautiful teaching, goes like this. When Moshe Rabbeinu comes before the burning bush, God says, "Shal na'alecha me'al raglecha." Shal na'alecha me'al raglecha. Take off the shoes from off your feet. Hasidim read it like this. Shal, take off. Ne'alecha, your lock. Na'al, noel delet, locking a door. Me'al raglecha, from your hergel, from your habits. Take off. Don't enter this sacred space with your habitual thing. The habitual thing for many people is when they see something, like somebody once came into a Hasidic shul and looked around and says, "What a fortune in Streimlich." He saw it as money, So it depends. You have to let go of that prejudgment that you have about a place and the habits that go. So you try with those people first, and you got to feel good about it. When you do it, you got to feel that this is real, and you have to have a sense of Shiviti Hashem lenegdi tamid. When that happens, it goes different. Another example: when I first started in New Bedford, they wanted a late Friday night service. Good Lubavitcher. There's going to be with men and women, and I better daven at home first. So I used to daven at home to be yotzit, and then I came and I did a service for them. Nothing happened because I wasn't in it. So I made up my mind I can't do this at home to daven first. I have to daven when I'm doing it at that point with the people. So that's how it happened. It became much stronger because it had the sense of Shiviti Hashem lenegdi tamid and being in the present. I think that's important with doing. But it's always very good to have some people who are with you. Mm-hmm. There is a meeting of the young people of UJA. It's going to be held in a big hotel in New York. On one floor was the John Birch Society, and on the other one was me and the people. I had to do the Friday night service, and Elie Wiesel was going to give the talk. No, the air conditioning wasn't working. Fans were going crazy. I didn't have a good PA system, but we cobbled something together in the end. I come in there and I was wearing my outfit, a streimel and a capote and so on, and I asked for people to have the Silverman prayer book because that gave me, I didn't like the Reform prayer book which had services, first service, second service, third service. I could never take all the ingredients I wanted, but the conservative was pretty good for me. So they gave out the Sidurim and I come in, and in the center of the hall there, they had the round tables, the stupidest arrangement. If you had to speak to people and they're sitting around the tables like as if it were cabaret, it's terrible, it doesn't work. You have to have people sitting in a different way if you want to teach. So you want to eat, es gesundheit, and then take the chairs and sit in a different configuration because otherwise it doesn't work. So here I come to this room and they sit around those tables, and in the center sits a group of rabbis. And I have the sense that they're figuring, how the hell is he going to put this one together? So I walked over to them and I said, Chaverim Rabbanim, please do me a favor, disperse yourself among the people. It's very important that you be all over the place and that you help me out. There is no way in which I can get all the people here to follow the same Nusach. So we're going to daven with Nusach America. I will use Stephen Foster melodies for Kabbalah Shabbos and for Ma'ariv, okay? And please help me out. And they did disperse themselves, and it was wonderful. Lecha dodi likrat chala pnei Shabbat mekabla shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad. Everybody was there with that, It came to Lo Tevoshi ve'lo tikolmi ma tishtochi u'ma tehemi boch yechesu aniyei ami ve'nivneta ir al tila lecha dodi. So it went. Adon Olam went to Shenandoah, and Hashkivenu I did. Grant that we lie down in peace, secure, secure, in thy protecting love. The Hashkivenu that they had in the Silverman Sidurim. Why am I telling you this? If you are stuck in a situation where you're dealing with a group of people you never met before, take your chutzpah and find the best common denominator that you can find so that they don't have to stumble over it and that they can join you in what you're doing. Otherwise, if you do more than 5% of the service, that's new, you're going to have trouble. And so if I had spent time with the people before and done one Friday night a little bit of the silence, another Friday night I've done a little bit of the prayer, another Friday night I've done, you know what I'm saying? And brought it to the people, and then we did one Friday night like this, and gathering consent. I did this without consent and without, it was very hard. It was so strange that they got, what do you call it, an allergy response for that. So that's what I want to share with you. Anyone else? Please.
I don't know so much as it's a question. A general question. My dream about the Maggidot is that every shul hire a Maggid. That next to the rabbi and the congregation, the Maggid stands there, and the Maggid actually takes care of the things you're talking about. That the experiential part of the practice is through the Maggid, whatever style that Maggid has. How do we get there?
One funeral at a time. I tell you, this is so strange. Another story. Some years ago, I had written a little booklet called The First Step. Basically, the basic meditation thing that was at the back of the first Jewish catalog. Dr. Finkelstein read it, and he said, I'd like to have this person come and teach here. So I was invited to JTS, and one of the professors put a cherem out already to people to come, and I said, how to put together your own theology. Oh, terrible, terrible. People did come to the lecture. Friday afternoon, we did a session on how to say Shira Shirim to God. You know, and that was wonderful. So we did everything. Then come Shabbos afternoon, and I'm leading the service, and I come to Ata Echad. And first I do it in the Nusach of Mincha, then I go, Thou art one, and thy name is one. You know, and everybody there sends me these icicles, you know. How could I do such a thing? The next morning, I meet with Professor Finkelstein, Professor Lieberman, and they were so upset that I used English. And I said to them, your people will be going out, and they will have to do stuff in English. And if they don't have a sense that they do das Nochach B'nai Hashem, it's going to be dead. So you need that. And they couldn't possibly, they were not ready to deal with that. I first talked to the people at the Reconstructionist Rabbinical College about spiritual direction, and they didn't know with what fork to eat that. Nowadays, 70% of the people at RRC get spiritual direction.
Yeah.
And it's changed, that's what I'm saying, one funeral at a time, you know? So it turns out that I have an appointment to talk with the current chancellor of JTS, to talk with him about Davinology and about experiential stuff and so on. And just because he is saying we are not so much interested today in scholarship as in meaning for the people, that's already a big, big step, you know?
Yeah.
So when Heschel was teaching there, they didn't let him teach Heschel, they told him to teach Maimonides. Buber had to teach sociology at the Hebrew University and couldn't teach I and Thou because the academic establishment didn't know how to do it. It's now changing. Yeah. And so I'm saying, have patience, because it's going to, right now, I can't imagine which rabbi would have the humility to say that I need to have someone else to inspire the people. I have another job to do. Today,
Shira Maggid. We have others too. But I'm the rabbi at Har Shalom in Charna, and
No, I'm saying so. Baruch Hashem, it's happening.
It's
It's happening, but it's slow. That's why I think of a Jewish renewal being a virus. Right? There are some people who wouldn't possibly say, I'm interested in this crazy stuff, but they'll be wearing the talis with the rainbow stripes, and they'll be doing already some things that we are doing, because it seeps in, and that's what it's supposed to do, if it's organic, okay? That's about all I can say. Other questions that you have are saying, yes. You've spoken before. I'll get to you back. Okay.
Some of what we've been really working with this weekend with Miles is about the paradigm shift. And I know you wrote a book about that. And I think one of the things that would be helpful for us to be really taking away from this week is how to be able to take what we're learning and move it out into the world. What are the kinds of, practices? What are the kinds of work that we want to be offering to the world to help that paradigm shift occur?
I want to say it doesn't go when I want to do it for Yenim, when I do it for somebody else. When you embody it, it'll come so natural. And when it's natural, then you don't have to, there's no apologia necessary. It goes so much easier. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Yeah, similar question to both Abby's and Shoshana's is, as listening to many of these lab type practices, and there's probably many I've experienced myself at Elat Chaim and other places. When I'm in my own community, there's really just a limited amount that you could introduce into the davening service. There's others that seem appropriate in holiday events and in ritual practice and adding to the practice. So you mentioned just having, what are the other way to create opportunities to do these labs, just to have your organization sponsor a class, a lab, or just to identify a particular lab experience and do that. I'm asking you, how is from your experience?
The first thing I would want to say is make sure that, take a look. If you were to say, have we made a tikkun for Friday night for American Jews, I would say yes. American Jews know Friday night better than they know Shabbos morning. Shabbos morning is still dentist and the hairdresser and stuff like that. For many, many people, they don't do Shabbos morning. I changed the nusach for Shabbos morning from Yismach Moshe to something else which I can show you, because it has in there the prophetic statement, Im toshiv mishabat raglecha asot chafatzecha biyom kodshi v'karata leshabat onek likdosh adnoi mechubad v'chibadetem asot derachecha metzor chefzecha v'daber davar az titanek al Adonai v'karticha al bamate aretz v'charticha nachlat Yaakov v'rikpi Hashem diber. It's such a wonderful passage there that says, don't go looking for bargains and Shabbos and talk business and so on and so forth. It's instead of that, and instead of saying, the Goyim don't have Shabbos, V'lo natata Hashem Elokeinu l'goy ha'aratzot, I have Yiratzon milfanecha ya Elokeinu v'Elokei Oreinu, שנזכה ליום שכולו שבס, ואז ינוחו כל יגיע כוח וישמחו במלכות חושם בשבס בכל העונג. So sometimes you have to make some shifts and changes. But the one thing that we can do best is to invite people. We used to call it Havdalah services, but I don't think I want to call it this way. I want to call it Suda Shlishit. And when you get people to come, and the place where you meet with the people doesn't have much artificial light, but as the sun is setting, and you get into the dusk time, is a neshama yeseret, daytime consciousness, evening consciousness meet together. It's beautiful. You sing nigunim, and then you say a short shtickle Torah. Why is it, for instance, that finally Bilam says, Ma tovu ahalecha Yisrael, Yaakov? Because he saw the people dwelling together in unity. Mm-hmm. That's all. And then you sing something, and you stay with that, and you make some harmony, and so on and so forth. Then you can ask people for some responses to that, and also make short answers. And that's a way in which people feel that the spiritual fellowship stuff is real. From these people later on, you can say, no, you've had this experience, as it were, coming into it gently, but would you like to do it more deliberately? Could we have one evening a week in which we can do certain practices? That's how I think I would suggest. But begin certainly with Suda Shlishit. A good story is always good for Suda Shlishit. Use some of the translations that I've done. The Yedid Nefesh, you who love my soul, compassionate, gentle source. Use that one. Use the other nigunim that are there. Anim Zmirot. I did a translation of Anim Zmirot, and that's very wonderful. If you can get people to do that as a practice, maybe not in shul immediately, but I tell you, this is crazy, because the most important part that used to, if you imagine you went to an old time shul, and they sent over Mr. Yokobok, and he should be the one who should lead the service until Shechanad. And all he could do, hallelujah, that's how he did it. And finally the Chazan comes, Shechanad, Marum, Kadosh, Mo, that's his Geschäft. What happens is, you should have had the Chazan all for Psuke de Zimra to make it alive. Halut et Hashem min Hashamayim, Shemesh ve'Reach, and see all the beauty that is there. That's when you need the. On the other hand, when it comes to Birchot Kriyat Shema, and we are doing this thing still because people don't show up early enough, so we make all the V'ha Ereneinu V'Torah. But that at that point it should be a lot more contemplative, less noisy, the service, if you follow the four worlds business. No. That's the moment. It is important sometimes to get the board to come to a retreat. A silly story goes like this. The rabbi is sitting in his study and he's studying. Big Gemara in front of him and he's studying. The president, the vice president walk by and they look in, they see he's learning. And the vice president says to the president, I thought we got a finished one. Okay, you see the stupidity? Because it amounts to, most of the time, that people don't realize what business a shul is in. They say, we want to run the shul like a business. How often you hear this from people on boards? We want to run the shul like a business. And you ask them, what business is a shul in? And for that, it would be good to have a retreat with the people of the board, and to do just that, to say, ask them, what business, if the shul were to really do its business. First of all, they'll come out with, we are in the business of creating Mazel Tov occasions for people. And many a shul is only doing that as a Mazel Tov facility. To the point that I saw that some shuls that don't have services when there's no bar mitzvah. which is very, very sad, okay? So the people have to know what business is a shul in, and once you can advertise what the real business of a shul is, and the people on the board understand it, then you'll find it's an easier job. Then sooner or later it'll be that you can say, what kind of personnel do we need to make this happen, that business that the shul is in, and then you can come up with that much, much better than if the people think only about membership and about money and about building fund and stuff like that. Okay. I'm getting tired, so anything else that comes up? Okay.
Thank you, Rabbi.
All right, let's sit a little bit quiet now. And in 5 minutes, I want you each to say a sentence or two about what keyword you want to take with you, okay? I don't think it takes so much more time. All right, speak up.
Lab.
Pardon?
Lab.
Lab.
Imagination.
Dads. Experience.
Chutzpah. Organism.
Inspiration. Laboratory.
Trust.
Chaverim.
Action.
Oh, laboratory.
Trust.
Vessel.
Humility.
Trusting Ruach HaKodesh. Trusting Ruach HaKodesh.
Rededication.
Experimentation.
Collaboration. Meeting others.
All kinds of...
Right.
Let me say this. What is supposed to happen at your empowerment, okay? I remember for years I've been wanting to be the speaker at the Reconstructionist Rabbinical ordination. They call it graduation. They don't want it to sound like you're getting an extra power or something in there. And that is a big mistake. Because the shlichut that you get comes from two places. One place is your teachers give you shlichut. There is a rule when it comes to gittin, for instance, that you can make one shliach ose shliach, that a shliach can make another one a shliach. And when we do our smicha program, then our smicha ordination thing, we say, we make you shlichim the same way as those who have made us shlichim. And that means we are shlichim for Klal Yisrael, we are not shlichim for renewal. That's very important, okay? Some people think that they're only shlichim for renewal. We are serving Klal Yisrael, that's what we're here for, okay? Having said that, there is also sometimes a situation where people say, Heyei lanu lekatzin. Story. A man comes to Reb Mendel Kotzka and says to him, my father came to me in a dream and told me I should become a Rebbe. So he says, so what? And he laughed at him. He says, what's the joke? He says, simply, if your father would have come to 300 people in a dream and said you should be their Rebbe, then I would take it seriously. If it came to you in a dream, I don't take it seriously. So the important part sometimes is that there are some people who say, I want you to be my guide. What is charisma? Charisma is not what a person has, but what is invested in a person. When people invested in you, then you have charisma. And if you can imagine what it was like, sometimes I think my Rebbe, Reb Menachem Mendel, was not a very emotive guy. If I were to talk about his affect was didn't have great range. So how come he was so Rebbidic? Because all the people looked at him as Rebbe, and he took that energy not for himself, but he took that energy to be able to give back to the people what's necessary. So that is smicha from below. So there's smicha from above and smicha from below. My sense is that you need some preparation before that, and you need some soaking in after that. So if you can arrange for yourself to have a retreat for a day or two afterwards, to let it sink in and to get a feel for that, that's very important. And if you can have a day or two before, and if possible a mikveh, that would be very helpful for you, because you would then be ready to take the imprint that you're getting in your smicha. You asked me to do that, I did it. Okay?
Thank you.
All right.